Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're plunging into a really compelling legal battle from the Philippines.
Yeah, it's quite the situation.
It really pits infrastructure development, a major project head-to-head with a vital marine ecosystem.
Absolutely.
We're going to dissect a powerful legal document. It's called a Petition for Writ of Kalikasan, which is, well, essentially an urgent plea to the highest court there to safeguard the environment. Our mission today really is to extract the most important insights from this pretty complex mix of law and science.
And help you understand the stakes, the arguments, and, why this case is just so significant.
Exactly. So let's get into it. What's immediately striking here is the core conflict, isn't it?
It really is. It's this alleged slow and immediate death of precious coral reefs in the Davao Gulf.
Right.
And this destruction, according to the people bringing the petition, it's directly linked to the ongoing construction of a huge infrastructure project, the Samal Island-Davao City Connector, the SIDC project.
And this isn't just, about building a bridge. From the petitioner's viewpoint, it's framed as a devastating trade-off.
That's the term they use.
They argue the state, specifically the executive branch, is at odds with its people and the nature it ought to protect. Basically, sacrificing coral reefs.
And these aren't just any reefs. They're natural barriers against typhoons, storm surges.
Which is incredibly alarming, especially when you remember the Philippines is one of the most climate-vulnerable countries globally.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to this key legal tool they're using, the writ of Kalikasan.
Okay, tell us about that. It sounds quite unique.
It is. It's an extraordinary legal remedy in the Philippines. It's unique because it lets individuals or groups go straight to the Supreme Court.
Skipping lower courts.
Exactly. On behalf of people whose constitutional right to a balanced and healthy ecology is violated or even just threatened with violation.
Wow.
And it's specifically for environmental damage that's of such magnitude as to prejudice the life, health, or property of inhabitants in 2 or more cities or provinces.
So large-scale damage.
Right. It bypasses the usual court hierarchy when, public welfare demands it.
Okay, so who are the main players in this? The petitioners. Who are they?
Well, on the petitioner's side, you've got groups like Ecotinio and the Sustainable Davao Movement. They represent people who benefit from the marine resources.
Right, the stakeholders.
And their arguments are heavily backed by detailed studies, observations from local scientists, people like Dr. John Laxon, Dr. Filipina Soto, Dr. Alfredo Medina. Their work is really the scientific backbone here.
And on the other side, the respondents.
Those are the government agencies, primarily the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH. They're the ones building the bridge.
The project proponent.
Correct. Then there's the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, DENR. They're the agency that issued the project's Environmental Compliance Certificate, the ECC, the permit, basically.
Okay.
And finally, there's a management board mentioned, the Samal Island Protected Landscape and Seascape Protected Area Management Board, or SIPLS, PMB. They supposedly supported the project.
Okay, so let's zoom in. Where is this damage allegedly happening?
The petition focuses on specific spots, right?
Yes, 2 main locations. Paradise Reef in Samal Island and the Hazan Marine Protected Area, the MPA, in Davao City.
And why are these places so important? We hear about Philippine biodiversity.
Oh, it's incredible. The Philippines is one of the world's 18 mega biodiverse countries. It has something like 25,000 square kilometers of reefs, 3rd largest globally.
Wow.
And it hosts the highest diversity of corals and shorefishes anywhere on the planet. These are truly the rainforests of the sea.
That's a powerful image. What do they actually do?
Well, they provide habitats for just countless marine species. They act as natural shields, protecting coastlines from waves, from storm surges. They help build beaches. And crucially, they're essential nursery and spawning grounds for fish.
Okay, so Paradise Reef specifically, what makes it stand out? The details seem quite stark.
They really are. Dr. John Laxon's study, it paints this picture of just a vibrant underwater community. He calls it highly biodiverse, mature and colonial structures of corals and complex
Habitats.
Exactly. In terms of habitat provision, available niches. Get this, 79 species of hard corals, 26 species of soft corals, over 100 species of reef fish, sea snakes.
Incredible diversity.
And critically, at least 3 species of endangered giant clams.
Endangered.
Wow. He even found puffer fish, which were often, indicators of good ecological health. Dr. Laxon basically concluded Paradise Reef is vital for the survival of all the coral reef communities around Samal Island, a de facto protected area.
Meaning it acts like one, even if it's not officially designated.
Precisely. And the Haizan MPA is just as vital. It boasts high live coral cover, 50–60%, and even has endangered black corals.
Another endangered species.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's seen as one of the most productive MPAs in the whole Davao Gulf. And thinking bigger picture, the Davao Gulf connects to the Salud Sea, so mass spawning events there, they're critical for wider marine areas.
And this isn't just about nature, is it? There's a huge human dependency. It's huge. An estimated 67,000 fisherfolk, over 100,000 coastal households just in that region, Region XY, they directly rely on these marine resources for survival, for their livelihoods.
So let's walk through the timeline of the alleged damage. The petition lays out impacts from late 2022 through mid-2024. What happened first?
Okay, so starting with offshore borehole drilling, that was October to December 2022. The claim is that about 20 square meters of reef were destroyed by a barge anchor.
Just dropped on it.
Apparently. Plus, residents reported drilling noise like all night, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. They saw oil slicks, even reported kitchen and restroom waste being dumped overboard. Dr. Laxon specifically noted damage to certain corals like Lopophilia and Porite species.
Okay, so that was the drilling. What came next?
Then, from February to June 2023, port and wharf construction. Petitioners claim pillars were placed directly onto hard corals near a former resort, Blue Jazz, just destroying them instantly.
Directly on the corals.
That's the allegation. And it got worse, they say, with craneway constructions from May 2023 to June 2024. These were built on either side of Paradise Reef.
Straddling it.
Seems like it. Steel supports allegedly placed right on top of corals, crushing parts of the reef into debris. They estimate 100 square meters of acropora corals cracked, discolored, crushed.
And the fish life.
A drastic decline reported, only tiny 3-inch fingerlings seen in a 50-meter stretch. A huge change.
And beyond the direct physical crushing, there's siltation, right?
Yes, a major issue. The drilling, the pillar pounding, it allegedly stirred up so much sediment. This silt then clogs the coral polyps, essentially suffocating them, leading to coral death. This damage extended about 2 meters out from the craneway.
And mitigation. Like silt curtains.
This is crucial. The petition alleges there is a complete absence of any silt curtains to contain this spread.
None at all.
That's the claim. Plus, observations of ongoing pollution. Oil, fuel, lubricants, microplastic debris, organic waste just going into the water.
So scientifically, what does all this do long-term?
Well, it's devastating. Oil contamination can cause tissue death, reproductive problems in corals. Microplastics can foster harmful microalgae. And the simple, hard truth is that coral regeneration takes, well, decades, maybe even centuries.
It's not something that just bounces back next year.
Not at all. This kind of damage, this chronic stress, it can be irreversible.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit to the paperwork, the legal side. The petitioners make some serious claims about what they call misdirection, especially around the Environmental Compliance Certificate, the ECC.
Right. The core accusation is pretty strong, that the DPWH, the Public Works Department, made serious and substantial misrepresentations or fraud in their ECC application, and that this is what allowed the project to proceed.
Okay, what are these alleged misrepresentations? The petition lists 8.
Yes, 8 key points. We can maybe group them to make sense of it. First, there's the whole issue of the protected area status.
How the project site was classified.
Exactly. The DPWH allegedly downplayed the site's status in their environmental impact statement, but the petitioners argue, hold on, the entire Samal Island is a protected area under a 1981 presidential proclamation.
So it should have had stricter rules applied.
That's the implication, part of the INAPAS system. They also point to a certification DPWH used from a local office, Cienro Panabo, saying a specific barangay wasn't in the protected area system. Petitioners say that office didn't even have the authority to issue such a certificate, making it ultra-vires, beyond its powers, basically void.
Okay, so issues with the protected status definition. What else?
Then there are claims about marine life in existing MPAs. The DPWH apparently said the Haizan Marine Protected Area was just proposed and would be relocated.
But it wasn't just proposed.
Petitioners say no, it's recognized by local ordinance, it's in the city's land use plan. They even say local fisherfolk reported a 30% catch increase since it was set up in 2013.
So a functioning MPA.
Right. And they accuse DPWH of omitting key parts of a local resolution that acknowledged the MPA. Similarly, with the Davao Gulf being a Marine Key Biodiversity Area, or MKBA, DPWH admitted it, but kind of downplayed the presence of marine mammals, saying they were too far away, like 17 kilometers.
The petitioners disagree.
Strongly, they present science showing the Gulf is a breeding ground for endangered species, dolphins, whale sharks, dugongs, turtles, and that noise from things like dredging and drilling can harm marine mammals much further than 17 kilometers. We're talking hearing impairment, behavioral changes, maybe even mass strandings.
Okay, so protected status, marine life. What's the next area?
Community engagement and procedures. DPWH claimed they did continuous consultations, recorded issues, but petitioners allege the responses to residents' concerns about sanctuaries, alternative routes, relocation, livelihoods were vague, misleading.
Like just going through the motions.
That seems to be the allegation. They even highlight a promise of local jobs that apparently went unfulfilled, with Chinese workers being employed instead. Plus, that management board clearance, the SIPLS PMB resolution, petitioners argue that board has no legal standing for this project area because it wasn't properly established by law, and Samal's still technically a mangrove swamp forest reserve.
Procedural issues, basically.
Yes, and that leads to the final point. The sufficiency of mitigation measures.
The proposed fixes, like coral transplantation and silt curtains.
Right, DPWH proposed them. But petitioners say, first, there's no solid national policy for coral restoration, so transplantation can't really replace what's lost, especially sessile or endangered species. And second, about those silt curtains.
The ones they allegedly didn't use.
Well, even if they had, petitioners cite studies showing silt curtains are only about 40% effective in the harsh conditions of the Pakiputan Strait, strong currents, deep water. And then, the most damaging claim, they allege DPWH used no silt curtains at all.
Wow. So across the board, they're saying the foundational environmental approval was flawed.
That's the core of the misrepresentation argument. It paints this picture, according to the petitioners, of systemic issues where environmental checks and community input were just sidelined. It's important to say, though, this petition outlines their claims. We don't have the DPWH or DNR specific responses here.
And what about the DENR, the Environment Department? What's their alleged role in this?
The petitioners argue the DNR was grossly negligent, that they relied on DPWH's alleged misrepresentations and didn't act even when they got reports about environmental violations. There's also a telling discrepancy pointed out. DPWH apparently claimed 40% siltation effectiveness in their plans, but the ECC issued by DNR actually required a 100% target.
That's quite a gap.
It raises questions. And it also leads to claims about non-compliance with the ECC conditions themselves.
So not just getting the permit, but following its rules.
Exactly. The petition details several alleged failures, like site prep and clearing failure to manage debris properly, leading to siltation, pollution.
Right.
The required information education and communication program, they say it was ineffective, misleading. The social development program for fisherfolk, inadequate planning, no proper consultation with the Fisheries Bureau, a required carbon sink program, no evidence it was ever implemented.
It sounds like a lot of boxes weren't ticked.
And maybe the most concerning are the monitoring mechanisms.
Wow.
An environmental guarantee fund, an environmental monitoring fund, multi-partite monitoring teams. These were supposed to be set up before the project started.
Beforehand. Makes sense.
But the monitoring team was allegedly formed 21 months late.
21 months.
Yes. Meaning its first report wasn't due until nearly 2 years after construction began. Petitioners argued this delay meant no prompt action could be taken on the coral damage being documented.
So the mechanism designed to catch problems was missing in action.
Essentially. And they also question if the required environmental unit, meant to monitor impacts daily, was ever properly formed or functioning, given the damage they observed.
Okay, so connecting all these dots, the alleged misrepresentations, the alleged non-compliance, the scale of the environmental damage seems key for the writ of Kalikasan.
It is. Remember that criterion. Prejudice to life, health, or property in 2 or more cities or provinces. The petitioners argue the damage here clearly impacts both Samal Island and Davao City, meeting that threshold.
And what about that prejudice? The ripple effect on people's lives, health, property. How does that play out?
This is where the stakes become very real, very human. Damaged coral reefs, for example, they lose their ability to act as natural breakwaters.
So coastal communities become more vulnerable.
Dramatically more vulnerable to waves, storms, floods. Barangay Hazan, one of the affected areas, is already rated high risk for storm surges.
And it's not just the sea, right? What about the land?
Good point. Samal Island is limestone. prone to dissolution. Subsidence sinkholes were even identified in the project's own assessment. Barangay Haizan is at moderate risk for soil liquefaction during earthquakes. So, major earth moving without proper safeguards. Petitioners warn it could trigger landslides, risking lives and homes.
So increased risk from natural disasters. What about contamination?
That's another major concern. Direct contamination from the construction itself, leaks, spills of oil, fuel, lubricants. The petition mentions observed oil trails, waste dumping,
Yeah.
and indirect contamination through sedimentation. All that stirred up sediment degrades surface water quality. It can create environments where bacteria thrive, potentially making water unsafe to drink.
And longer-term waste issues, too.
Yes, that came up in a community survey. 92% of respondents worried the bridge would increase solid waste, overwhelming already strained local facilities, which would inevitably impact the marine environment further.
And perhaps the most direct impact for many livelihoods.
Absolutely poignant. The project site overlaps traditional fishing grounds. Fisherfolk say they've been forced out by the siltation by fish migrating away.
And their income.
The petition reports a drastic drop from maybe PHP 200 a day down to sometimes less than PHP 100. And promises of subsidies, they say, haven't materialized.
That's a huge hit.
It is. And it's not just fishing. Samal relies heavily on tourism, on its pristine marine environment. Paradise Reef was a key attraction, a de facto MPA. Destroying it could cripple local resorts, affect employees.
And even the existing transport.
Right. People working on the boats and barges currently running between Davao and Samal, they anticipate losing their jobs once the bridge opens.
Right.
Potential layoffs, cessation of services, it ripples out.
Given all this alleged ongoing damage and the urgency, the petition asks for something immediate, right? A TPO.
Yes, an urgent prayer for a temporary environmental protection order, or TPO.
What does it take to get one of those?
Two main things need to be shown: extreme urgency and the likelihood of grave injustice and irreparable injury.
Okay, so what's the evidence for urgency here?
Well, first, the project isn't just hypothetical. As of April 2025, it was already reported as more than 12% complete. Target completion is 2028.
Right.
So the clock is ticking. Continued construction, they argue, means continued decimation of the reefs.
The damage isn't stopping.
Exactly. And second, that point about regeneration. Coral damage takes decades, maybe centuries, to heal, if it ever fully does. The chronic stress weakens the whole reef system. Destroying Paradise Reef, this major stepping stone, this genobank, could break the whole ecological chain for Western Samal.
So stopping it now is critical.
That's the argument. It's about preventing a tipping point. Halting it now, while it's still relatively early, avoids a situation where, down the line, the court might hesitate because so much has already been built. It's about doing no further harm.
And the grave injustice and irreparable injury.
That really ties it all together. The petitioners argue that the ongoing violation of the constitutional right to a healthy environment, the destruction of these vital, unique coral reefs, and all the resulting harm to people's lives, health, property, that is, the grave injustice, the irreparable injury that both nature and the communities stand to lose permanently.
Wow. This has been a truly illuminating deep dive. It really connects the dots between environmental science, complicated legal arguments, and just the real everyday lives of these communities.
It really does.
We've seen how this alleged destruction of coral reefs by huge infrastructure projects, not just some abstract ecological issue, it directly impacts people's vulnerability to disasters, their access to clean water, their ability to make a living.
It's such a powerful illustration of how interconnected everything is, the natural systems, the legal frameworks, the social fabric. And it leaves us, and you, the listener, with a pretty significant question to think about, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do we, as a global community, as societies, manage this immense pressure for development while also upholding that fundamental right to a healthy environment, especially when the cost can be so immediate, so devastating, and the long-term consequences potentially irreversible?